Hey, what's up? I'm Mike Squires, and this is Couchers episode number 141. And my guest, Jeff Smith, the CEO of Newman Guitars. Jeff Smith is upholding the long tradition of this American guitar company, which was established in Austin, Texas, in 1978. After a long relationship and ties to the Rolling Stones and Keith Richards, the original designer, Ted Newman Jones, he set up shop in Austin, Texas, and started building these original designs, which are really, really cool. And this guy was like super ahead of his time, like one of the godfathers of independent guitar builders. And in such a set up shop in such a guitar, a music and guitar music centric town, which is amazing. He's built guitars for a who's who of legends, really. So, unfortunately, Ted passed away a couple years ago, and Jeff is carrying the torch. So it was great to have a conversation with him. They're still building beautiful guitars, same design. There are some things that are tweaked for sort of modern playability, but everything is the same design. It's the one design, very balanced offset guitar. And you should go take a look at it. newmanguitars.net. They are in some platinum rooms around guitar centers, and they do direct sales, and they have a list of dealers you can take a look at. And they are also doing custom builds. So they do some beautiful engraved top guitars in conjunction with Danny O'Brien, who's a legendary, he did the engraving on the Zomidas guitars. Dude is a legend. So go take a look. These guitars are amazing. I had a great time talking with Jeff. I hope you enjoy this conversation. If you are enjoying this conversation, or if you are enjoying the Couch Riffs cover song videos, please, by all means, go take a look at our Patreon, patreon.com/couchriffs. I don't know how I came up with that, but that's the only place you can download the audio for the cover songs that we release, the videos. And there's a bunch of exclusive merch and other things there. So, some advertising opportunities if anyone wants to advertise here. So thank you so much to people who have been supporting Couch Riffs there. Also, thank you so much to River City Guitars. River City Guitars, of course, is our favorite little guitar shop there in Spokane, Washington. Every day is a buying day. If you have anything you're sitting on, it's collecting dust, you're not playing it, guitars, basses, drums, anything cool, vintage, used, boutique-y, you should be playing your stuff. You see these guitars? Every one of them gets played. Not every single day, but I play every single one of these things. And if I wasn't, I'd get rid of them. And because I'm not trying to be greedy. So River City Guitars are going to take good care of you. These guys are my friends. I trust them 110%. Bobby's a good fella. He's gonna be good to you. And who doesn't want to be treated with the golden rule? Give them a call, 509-818-7693. 509-818-7693, or drop them an email, sales.rivercityguitars@gmail.com. Follow them on Instagram, Facebook, all the stuff at River City Guitars. Make sure you do that because, stuff comes in, they take pictures, post it on their socials, and it gets sold before it even hits their website. So follow them. They get a lot of cool stuff in. I love River City Guitars. Thank you so much for your support, River City Guitars. Don't forget the golden rule, okay? Treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't forget to not be an asshole. All right. Can you hear me? Oh, I fear that you possibly cannot hear me.
Hello, Mike.
All right. How you doing, man?
I'm very good.
What's happening?
Not much. I'm afraid this is going to be the best audio I can provide for you.
Oh, that's all right, man. It's absolutely and most certainly not the worst audio I've captured. Trust me.
Okay, very good. I'll speak clearly and such.
Yeah, great. So yeah, you're doing all right. You hanging in there through 2020?
Yeah, 2020's been a tough year for a lot of people, but the good thing about it is when you're a small company, you're more resilient, your overhead is less, and your ability to compromise in situations is, much greater.
Right.
Mhm.
Uh, so man, I have a lot of questions. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know um, a ton. I'm pretty pedestrian when it comes to the history of Newman, and so um, I've been following you guys on Instagram. I think a guitar that caught my eye somehow was the 3D model with the carved
Yeah.
wings, and it still, like I said, there are a handful of guitars that I think about all the time, and that's a very beautiful guitar. It's just like um and so yeah, I kind of want to I want to hear about you, how you came into this, and about
Sure.
the history of the company, because I mean I know it's pretty rich. There's a lot of history there.
Yeah, the history is very rich. It started with Keith Richards and Ted Newman Jones working together in '71. And eventually, Ted makes the first five-string guitar, open G for Keith. And they just kind of blossomed from there. And Ted worked for Keith Richards all the way up until about '83. But in '78, Keith gave him, they say, $10,000 to start up his own shop in Austin, Texas. So in late '78, Ted moves to Austin, Texas with this seed money from Keith, and that's kind of when he went his way with the Rolling Stones. That was probably '78, Some Girls, period, something like that.
Yeah.
And so Ted puts the money up, opens up shop in Austin, Texas, still goes on tour with a lot of people, still starts building guitars for a lot of great people. So that was a lot of his history in Texas.
He started as a repair guy.
Yeah, I mean, the story goes that he repaired a guitar and then flew all the way to France while the Stones were recording Exile on Main Street, and kind of whipped it out on him and said, here, this guitar is, redone for you. So he started off doing a lot of that, but then, probably 71-ish, 2-ish, he was like building his own things and trying to work with his own body design and stuff. So that's the thing about the Newman that's real unique, is that the body design is specifically his.
Right.
It's not a Telly or a Strat. It's legitimately its own thing.
And from what little poking around I did, it's also evolved and become sort of more open and swooping design. Yeah.
Yeah, well, a carved top kind of changes the shape and look of it, but the overall complete outline is still that of Ted's. Uh, and it's an offset body, but it's a. I think it's a really good design, and everything that we do is going to stay in that vein of what it is. I mean, part of it is upholding a legacy of a guy and his vision of it. So I have to think to myself, every decision you make, what would Ted do in this case?
Right.
So,
How did you come to be involved?
well, I had been kind of friends with Ted for a while, and then in early 2015, we got together, and I drove down to Dyersburg, Tennessee. We talked about guitars and stuff like that and decided that we'd rebuild the company. So part of my forte to the company was getting involved with the technology side of it and recreating the history that we had. Ted had a lot of good history with the Stones and building guitars for Tom Petty and Bob Dylan. stuff like that. And a lot of that history was lost. So, the quest for me came to with Ted is Ted wanted to take the company forward, and I had to recount the history the best I could because the history had to be captured before you can necessarily build on the future. So there was a
Right.
lot of work there to do. So
Sure. And
so
where are you? Where do you live at? Where are you
I live
located?
in Indiana,
You're in Indiana.
Washington, Indiana.
So that's where the company is based.
Yeah, we're based in Washington, Indiana.
Uh, and so when you say like recounting the history, are you talking about like looking back through the evolution of the guitars and figuring out how to like figuring out more efficient manufacturing practices?
Yeah, I mean, part of it was in 2015, Ted and I worked together for about a year and a half, and then Ted got cancer. And I had to go get help for Ted in building and stuff like that. And the company vision was kind of getting lost by the fact of his illness, and
Right.
so he and I had to get to a point where I said, "Hey Ted, you got to tell me everything you know so I can recount it and we can get it down in history." So in other words, we had to digitally uh, CNC design a neck and hand it to him and say, "Is this what you want?" And then he would look at it and we'd talk about it. And we worked with a guy that was still critical to the company to this day is Jacob Harper in Boonville, Indiana, and he's a phenomenal luthier. And so his value to us was getting Ted's design on a digital perspective so it could be recounted accurately from now on.
Yeah.
So there was that period of time where I was working with Jacob and trying to get Ted's designs right in his lifetime, and then hand it to him and say, "What do you think?" And then you have to remake it again, and what do you think?
Right.
He had to understand that what he was approving was kind of his legacy moving forward. So it was a real heady time, real difficult time.
Yeah, I would imagine. I imagine it would be hard to approach something like that with grace on his part, just knowing that his name is going to be left on a headstock and he's got to be like, yeah, that's how I would do it.
Yeah, it kind of first started out. Jacob's work was really good, and Ted liked it and all that stuff. But you can't. I had to tell Ted, you can't look at everything and like it. You have to find what do you not like about it. You can appreciate it and stuff, but part of it is, uh, did we get the neck right?
Right.
Because
That's a big part.
that's what we're going to remember, and it's not necessarily the fret job or something like that. You're kind of looking at just this embody the essence of what you're trying to do. And what Ted's neck carve was unique, and it kind of came from Keith Richards bringing his arm up the fretboard, and you're almost you're putting your thumb around the base side of the neck, and your neck curves, your hand curves. It
Right.
doesn't stay the same. So it's an asymmetrical V-shaped carve that moves into your hand as your hand changes its kind of natural position moving towards the body, if that makes sense.
Makes great sense to me.
And so that was a unique thing of Ted's. So we have to capture that. And then, the issues of neck angle and, headstock angle, radius and all that kind of stuff. It had to be what he wanted, not what I wanted. And he had to be critical about it the best he possibly could.
Was
And
it hard for him? I imagine when at the peak of his building,
yeah.
was he was still a small crew, right? I mean, it was him and maybe a couple people.
You mean Ted?
Yeah.
Ted was kind of doing it by himself. and he and I were working the best we possibly could, but we couldn't bang out 20 guitars or anything else like that. But it was kind of reinstalling itself as an infant vision again, a brand new vision for something that he established in 78,
Right.
1978. So
I mean,
100 years later,
it would be hard to let go of that kind of control, I guess. Like he had, he put his hands on every single neck and carved every single neck.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So I mean, you have to look at, he had people working for him,
Yeah.
that might have went a little to the left or a little to the right in the neck carve. I mean, that can kind of happen, but yeah, I mean, so the thing is for me is he had a thick history with the Rolling Stones. Uh, and I wasn't interested in talking with him about Rolling Stone stories because we'd never get to the guitar building.
Right. Yeah. I imagine he traveled with him for 12 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
1 year probably would give you a month of stories.
yeah. So I asked when I kind of first got together with Ted, I asked him about the sessions for Black and Blue, and I said, well, what was the sessions like? And he told me the whole story about everything, and I just realized, man, this guy knows everything as far as like he was there.
Right.
And so, but once we knew his time was limited, let's just put it that way, we had a lot of work to do to get things lined out. And the further along he went in his illness, the harder that was to do. And he had lung cancer. And so, I'm realizing I can ask him probably 4 questions today, and I have to spread them out.
Right.
So it was a very tough period, actually. I mean, that's what I look back at it. So,
Yeah, that sounds really tough.
yeah, but nonetheless, I mean, the goal was established that we would create that legacy and embody the guitar the way he wanted it to, and create the essence of what he was trying to do in Texas in 78, and keep that going. And also keep in mind, we have advanced the guitar. So we look at the fact that things that he would have done to it, I'm sure he would have approved every change we've made, So
Right.
moving forward, we're in good shape.
Was the 3D thing, because I'm fascinated with the raised center and the tapered sides. I think it's super cool.
Yeah,
And it's really light, right?
yeah, they're about 5.5 pounds, and it came from Billy Gibbons wanting a guitar underneath 6 pounds, and so he said shave, every speck of sawdust out of it, and chamber the thing, real thin like a wooden bowl, So Jacob put it on a CNC router, and we just chambered that thing real thin, and we cut the weight out of the top, and we terraced the top.
Yeah.
And so it took all the weight out of it. And then you chamber the neck, and you put carbon fiber rods through the neck, wow, and make it real thin too. So there were a lot of advantages that guitar had in design, but a lot of it was to be minimalistic about how much wood is there because of weight.
Right.
So
exceptionally cool design, I think.
Yeah, and Jacob's got a lot of a responsibility there for that. I mean, yeah, kudos to him, and he continues to work well with us. That's for sure.
How did is the relationship with the famous carving, the metal engraving fella, is that a long time relationship, or is that something that has come along more recently?
Come along more recently. Danny O'Brien engraved for Tony Zomidas, and,
right,
and those guitars were famous with Ron Wood. And at that same time, you had Ted making guitars for Keith.
I played Ron Wood's Zomidas.
Really?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And now, so after all these years, we had a chance to work with Danny through a guy named Ian Dickey. And Ian put the whole thing together. And we got a hold of David Humphreys, does the metal work, and he does an excellent job delivering the metal the way it needs to be to Danny, and Danny engraves it and then sends it over to us here in the States. And then Jacob and us build the guitar.
That's crazy. So he actually, that guy is still doing all the engraving. He's not designing the engraving pattern and
No,
sending a file over to someone to mass produce them.
no, he's doing the engraving himself by hand, and that's one of
insane.
the. Oh yeah, every one of them is one off, and so they're spectacular. Uh, they're not recreations of anything.
Right.
They're beautiful, one of a kind pieces of art, and so I hate to let every single one of them go.
Wow.
You can imagine.
That's insane.
Yeah. So he's got 50 years in his craft,
Yeah.
and
How old is he?
I'd say mid 70s.
Wow.
I'd say mid 70s. Legendary, totally legendary. So I mean,
Yeah.
George Harrison, his guitar had engravings by Danny O'Brien. The cover of Geddy Lee's bass book has Danny O'Brien engraving on the cover of it. So I mean,
I have that book. Yeah.
so to work with him was a totally a gifted thing for us. And in a funny sort of way, it's kind of marrying the builder of Ron Wood and the builder of Keith Richards with a Newman engraved by the same guy in a new way.
That's
And so
great.
they're really great guitars. Totally great.
Are you guys able to swing the coaches around and tie in any of the artists that Newman worked with in the past? Are there plans to make, a production guitars of any of the models that like Petty or Dylan or Keith played and put them in production?
I don't think so. I mean, I've had a desire to recreate the Woody Woodpecker guitar that was lost forever. There's a mystery story about that guitar, and it'd be just amazing to try to recreate it. So if you can't find the original, well, try to find the next best thing. So we'd be the right guy to make that guitar.
What is that?
It was a Paduke body Woody Woodpecker guitar made by Ted Newman Jones that had Woody Woodpecker inlays on the frets. And as it went up the fretboard, it started out the real vintage Woody Woodpecker, and by the time you reached the end of the fretboard, it was the modern day Woody Woodpecker. And so these were all wooden inlays on the fretboard.
Wow.
The story is that Ted delivered the guitar, and the guitar disappeared within days and was never seen again. Still hasn't been seen again.
Well, do you know who that guitar was delivered to, or is that a tacky question?
It's in some TED interviews.
Mm.
Yeah, and so, but it's lost. It's lost forever, and who it's delivered to is not currently where it is, and it's kind of one of those deals. It's a guitar mystery. It's kind of
Right.
cool. And, it's kind of like the Titanic at the bottom of the sea for Newman.
Man, you never know when it like that guitar might just show up because look at Frampton's guitar.
Mm-hmm.
That thing was lost in a plane crash and came back to him.
Yeah, like Jesse Taylor played a Newman guitar, and he was a Texas legend. And he played a Newman guitar, and it was at Texas Tech in their artifacts department. And so they reached a situation where they released it to us as a historical artifact to make it running again, because we discussed that even though it's a historical artifact for the state of Texas, it should be a playing, restored, usable, functional guitar. And so
Wow.
there's a story about that in Vintage Guitar Magazine, and they They brought that guitar to the Dallas Guitar Show and gave it to me, and I took it home back to Indiana, and then they drove all the way from Texas to pick it up, so it didn't have to travel UPS.
Oh, that's a good move. I worked for
Yeah, and now
UPS
it's
for a little
now,
while.
and now it's back in the artifacts department at Texas Tech in a functional way. So
That's
so
amazing.
we restored a guitar for Lucinda Williams, and so we've had associations to the artists through some of the work that Ted did by that stuff.
Yeah. Before coming into your relationship with Ted, what was your relationship with the guitar and guitar building and playing?
Yeah, well, I started playing at age 13,
Yeah.
and that was in 1977, I think, and played in a bunch of small bands in Washington, Indiana, and played with my friends, the Jailbirds, and was the name of our group, and we rocked up the town here, playing kind of old bluesy style, stuff,
Yeah.
almost Thunderbirds like.
Uh-huh.
And then I go off to college and study classical guitar at Ball State University from 83 to 87. Then I go to Seattle
Huh.
and try to play music for a living between 87 and 89.
That's an
So
interesting time to be in. I lived outside of Seattle. I'm a Washington person, though I live in New York now.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
did you do you do some gigs while you were there? Like you were gigging
yeah,
regularly?
yeah. I was playing with my brother. His
Oh,
name is
cool.
Neil, and he played bass and I played guitar. And we had a drummer named Greg.
Uh-huh.
We're still in connection with each other and stuff like that, but we had a great power trio. So I've been a serious guitar playing musician for all these years, you know. Um, but a lot of my situation was having a business background. Uh, I wanted to merge what I thought, I could add to the picture as a business side of a company too. Not just be a playing guitar player, but kind of say, okay, what great brand is out there, and what builder is worth working with, and how should you invest your time if you feel something passionate and important about something. So
And so when did Newman come on to your radar?
probably I bought a guitar that was from a Dallas guitar show by a guy named Rod Norwood, and he's a vintage guitar collector and stuff like that. And he picked out that guitar and had a keen eye for it. And I ended up buying it from him a couple weeks after he bought it. And that set the whole tone for me. It's like, what is this guitar? And I knew it was a Newman, and I was a Keith Richards fan. Um,
Hard to not be.
yeah, yeah, but you actually, in this day and age, you really can look up people, and you really can go find out about stuff. And if you find yourself in a moment where you uh, have a passion and a vision for something, you got time to see it through. I mean, that's what we're all here for, is to kind of find our path of what we're considered to be doing.
I mean, I hope that people do that. I wish that more people were doing that, because I think the world would be a much better place for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so, all right, so you get this guitar. What year is it?
It's a 78,
So it's
1978.
it was built in Austin, but like potentially it was one of the first guitars built in the Austin shop.
Yeah, he said it was the first of 13
Ha, ha, ha,
that was
ha.
made. And he said it was built at the same time as Dylan's, Tom Petty's, and Keith Richards. So it's like mine was right in the middle of that. And
Wow.
so that's kind of, hey, well, how do you, what are you doing? Can we build together? What do you, a million questions, you know.
What year was this that you get the guitar?
I got the guitar in 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you got it at the Dallas Guitar Show?
Yeah. Well, I didn't. Rod Norwood did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so, but it led to a long trail, and 7 years later, I catch up with Ted.
7 years you have this guitar, you're playing
Yeah,
it,
I'm
you're
playing
thinking
it
about
and,
it.
loving it and enjoying it and everything else like this. And it takes a while. And I start working with a guy named Gianfranco Gaddaci, and he's a Brazilian builder of a contemporary guitar. So in 2007, I start working with another builder. Uh, and he was building guitars in the States and building these extremely cool nylon string electric Brazilian guitars. And we worked with Buster B. Jones. Have you heard of Buster B. Jones?
No, cool name.
Great, great guitar player with the thumb picking, and really awesome. And so we did the Miami Guitar Show together and stuff like that, and we did a couple of web press releases, and I got a Vintage Guitar Magazine article going with him and stuff like that. So I kept that going for about that 7 year period, and then he went back to Brazil. And I had kind of created relationships in the industry that I thought were of value still. And now I got to find another builder to invest in my time and energy. And had obviously just thought, hey, how about Ted? And Ted and I have talked in the past, ever since I got the guitar, I back and forth with writing and stuff like that.
Yeah. Outside, what was your background before you got involved with the nylon string guitars? You said you had a business background.
Yeah, a day job is selling protective clothing to
Yeah.
the utility industry. So I had a technical background in sales,
Yeah.
understood marketing, and understood uh, the nature of running a business,
Sure.
um, and how it could be done efficiently if you don't go out and borrow a bunch of money. Somebody said something to me funny when I started really working with the whole Newman thing. Is they said it's fun until you owe money. And
I
I was
mean,
like,
it
oh,
could
that's
be
it.
argued that that's when the fun begins.
Well, and you run through those things that you say, if you have a vision for this, you should invest in your vision, and you should see it through. And but I don't think it was Ted's legacy to have me stay up at night and can't sleep. I
Right.
don't think Ted's legacy was putting your house up and let it ride. I think Ted's legacy was enjoy it, do the best you can with it, try to keep it above water, build some cool guitars that people will hopefully never forget. And, I like playing them. So
Yeah.
I get one once in a while.
What's that?
I said, I get one once in a while,
You keep one every once in a while?
every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, it would be hard not to. I mean, like I said, I've peeped on those things for a minute now. Uh, I saw that you got yourself positioned into the platinum rooms.
Yeah, with Guitar Center.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that's a really good thing too. And the business model for that is to build a premium, world-class quality guitar and bring more of a boutique style and option to their offerings. And so the question really would be, if you looked at all the guitars on the wall, if you walk into a brick and mortar store and you walk and you see all the guitars on the wall, uh, I could tell you what a Gretsch sounds like. I could tell you what a Rickenbacker,
Sure.
and no disrespect to any of them, because I have a lot of guitars that I really enjoy, and they're all different for that reason. But I think you'd look at a Newman and go, I really don't know.
Right.
is it a Supro? Is it a, you know, then there's a lot of great builders out there that are building high quality guitars. Uh, there's Saul Cole is building great guitars. Bill
I've
Harvey,
I
you know,
got my first Cole guitar in 1997.
really,
Yeah, I've been a buddy of Saul's for some time. I've owned 5 of his guitars, I think.
yeah. Now he's finishing up for us 2 legacy models that are actually Newman collaborations.
Really?
Yes.
That's
And
amazing.
when Ted passed away, he had 11 neck through bodies, flamed cherry neck through bodies that were already cut. And so it's taken me 5 years to work with the right people to get them to finish these guitars for me as part of Ted's option. So now, take into consideration, you inherit this guy's shop and his 11 prized wood bodies. I think what Ted would have wanted to do with them is work with the best builders that he would have wanted to work with. So instead of us finishing them ourselves and stuff like that, we sent a bunch of them out. And we've had everybody out there helping us. Robert Mondell is making one right now, and then Saul is making 2 more.
Oh,
So that'll finish up the series after we do number 5 here.
yes,
So,
Saul does an incredible job. But it's funny because when I mention Saul's name to folks, they look at him because, to me 1997 seems like a couple years ago, but of course it's 23 years ago, almost 24
right.
years ago, right?
Mhm.
Uh and people look at him as sort of like, a godfather of boutique guitars, because he had been around building Cole guitars for a few years before I got my first one. But really, Ted is building guitars in the 70s, like not a lot of small builders doing stuff.
No, no. Ted was a pioneer. I would say that he was more of a pioneer than a sharp luthier. He was more of a wood combinations kind of guy, a pickups combination kind of guy, carved to the neck, you know.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. His finish work was not necessarily the best in that regard.
What? Well, have you ever played one of those Tony Zomidas guitars or gotten up close to one?
Oh yeah. Now the Tony stuff is totally top notch.
It's Ronnie's is pretty rustic. I mean, it looks like you can see chisel marks around the neck joint still.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the way Ted's is too. But I guess maybe it would be the era. Ted was talking to me about how he would use specific tools to do multi-functions because they just didn't have a lot of. He had a drill press, I guess, that he used forever, routing bodies. So you can see some real. If you take them apart and look at the original Teds, and that's another thing we try to do also is we try to uh, have a few real guitars that Ted made that we always use as a benchmark of certain things.
That's great.
Yeah, so we're always looking for old ones that Ted made and not just building new ones.
I mean, do you come across them on the market?
Yeah, people will send me information about them, and we're a good home. If you have a Newman out there, give us a call.
Do you have any idea of how many guitars he built that didn't go to, A-list players that probably didn't let go of them?
He probably built a few hundred, you know, and so that's what you don't have a lot of them out there to begin with. You were kind of dealing with a company that if you weren't right there in that moment in time, you kind of missed it. And so I
Right.
knew that to me it was always a very uh, I was always sentimental about the body shape. And to have an actual Newman was great, and then to actually have the conversations back and forth with Ted, and then driving to Dyersburg all the time to see him and stuff like that, and helping him with, because I never told him no in every single thing we ever did. What I would say is, yeah, let me look into it, Ted. I'll let you know. And I would get off the phone and go, I have no idea. He would ask me questions. He's asking me, can you call Slash?
Right.
And I want to build a guitar for Slash. And this was in the, when we were, and I don't know Slash. I
Right.
mean, it's not necessarily like at that moment I could reach the phone out and say, hey, Slash, this, And so,
That might be a tough ball to clear. He's got a pretty tight relationship.
yeah, we could get there. I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's
for
no
sure.
problem. We could get to him. But at that time for us, 5 years ago, we were much more of a startup in every aspect. And so, but I didn't ever tell him no. I would always tell him, let me see what I can do. Let me go work on it. Because there was a lot of periods of his time where he had nothing but hope. So that had to do with, I had to keep the company building and going on and forward and giving him news and showing him examples and doing everything I could like that, because that was his hope that he had while he was healthy enough to
Right.
experience that. But I mean, I showed him a guitar 2 weeks before he passed away, that we had built, and it was the legacy model, and he signed the back of the headstock, and there's just stuff like that is just priceless as far as the experience goes. So it doesn't really matter if I'm in the platinum room or not, and
Right.
stuff like that. And I don't mean any disrespect. It's just kind of like if you're following this kind of thing, and it's kind of following a legacy more so than it is even company related, as I think about it.
I imagine that one he signed, you must have kept that one. Yeah. Did you keep it?
Yeah, I kept. He signed 3 of them as prototypes while we worked together, and I kept all of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things. I mean, when he passed away, I inherited everything that was Newman. Everything related to. So I mean, I took all of his belongings that weren't personal. His wife, his mom, Peggy. Peggy and I had a great relationship. She was a wonderful lady in Dyersburg, Tennessee. And so when Ted passed away that day, she called me and she said, I don't know what to do with all Ted's stuff. And I said, I don't either, but I'll call you back and we'll figure it out together. And within 2 days, I think I drove down there, and, our agreement was everything that was Newman Guitars Company related, I should have to try to continue to perpetuate Ted's name to the public, and
Sure.
honor the guy. And so that's kind of what I did.
What I mean, as a side note, what an awful thing to survive your child.
Oh, Peggy was she's tough. She lost her husband, and she just recently lost her daughter, and then Ted, and then Ted's brother passed away several years before he did. So Peggy survived everybody.
She's still around.
She's still around, yeah.
Wow.
And she's great. She's a real spitfire lady, and
Yeah, it sounds like.
she had a neck brace for a long time. So when she would talk, she'd have to lean into you, and it's a cute lady from the South. She would drink black coffee with you, and very fond of Peggy.
Yeah. Um, in relation to the guitars, and you were talking earlier about woods and pickups and sort of like the more technical aspects, not necessarily the design, but the recipe, right?
Right, sure.
Is a lot of that stuff the same, or are you mixing it up with the options?
We're not changing the essence too much, which is the wood is probably the most specific part of the guitar still, even if it's a chambered wood or even if it's an arched top, or terrace top type of situation, it's still the wood. Um, we have access to a lot of good woods, which really helps. Uh, so it's kind of like if you have a vision for something, you can go for it. We made a mosaic rosewood top for on a 5-string no cutaway for Tobin Dale in Nashville. And
Wow.
that was a real cool, one of a kind guitar. So we've done different types of wood selections and stuff. But the main thing is, um, I think Ted liked specific woods and babinga and rosewoods. And
What is babinga?
babinga is a kind of a brownish wood that's has a ribbon look to it. So it has a real caramely, beautiful curl to it. And if you get a big slab of it, then you can get all kinds of designs and ideas and stuff. And
Is it dense?
yeah, it's a very dense wood. But I think the guitar that you might be referring to, that was the guitar with the wings on the side of it,
Yeah.
the dark wood in the middle,
Yeah.
that's babinka, and that's what that wood is all about. And so now you can use a dense wood like that if you're carving half the top out.
Right.
So, and it's not really creating too much weight. And so a lot of cool stuff,
And
and
that was something that carried through from his designs from the 70s. Was he using babinga back then?
yeah, and Paduke and stuff like that. But I would say also one of the factors is he's doing 20 on the asymmetrical V carved neck that I was talking about. He's doing 24 frets on 24 3/4 scale. So you kind of have a Gibson scale with 24 3/4, but you have 24 frets. And
Right.
so Billy likes, his fretboards the way they are and doesn't necessarily go looking for 24 frets on 24 3/4, you know, 12-inch radius. That's not necessarily what he's always looking for. And so anyway, so handing a guitar to him was great because he loved it and said, don't change a thing. So the guitars we made for him were 24 3/4 and 24 frets.
Wow.
And that's kind of a unique thing too, because when you're playing it, it almost has this short scale feel to it, but it has a good long neck, and how the neck hits the body is just very beautiful and balanced, and really proud of what it's become.
On that short scale, how's bending strings?
Great. I mean, you have a beautiful bending situation on the strings because uh, your frets aren't so wide and everything else like this, and it just gives you a real comfortable sense. And the other thing is too, is if you're changing the way your hand is approaching the fretboard, you're changing the way your strength is,
Right.
and doing things like vibrato and bending and stuff like that, and backwards or forwards bending, up and down bending, pinky bending.
Yeah, right. And all of the necks have that what do you call it? The shifting V carve to it.
It's an asymmetrical V shape.
And that's every neck.
Yeah. Unless it be a legacy model that was hand carved by, like, in other words, Saul Cole doing his thing, sending it back. He may not necessarily try to hone in on that specific part of it because the guitar is designed to be essentially Saul's vision of a Newman, or Robert Mondell, or
Right.
Bill Harden, their visions of a Newman.
Sure.
So, but all the rest of them that we build, that's what we're going for always.
Oh, that's so cool.
And that's the asymmetrical V-shaped carve on 24 frets. So it just has a unique feel to it as a guitar.
Yeah, for sure.
So like,
I'm gonna find a platinum room somewhere around here. There must be one in New York. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, they do. They got one there in
Well, I know they
Manhattan.
have a couple platinum rooms. They have one on 14th and they have one in Times Square. I don't think they have one in any of the Jersey stores, but I'm down in the city semi regularly.
Hmm.
I'll throw a mask on and get my hands on one of these things.
Yeah, and so, and that's a really good deal too, because I think the boutique builder needs to have a little bit of a mainstream profile too, that helps the company, build. I mean, we're still only building 25, 30 guitars a year tops.
Right.
So we're not a huge builder, but we're building at a rate we can tolerate. Sometimes too much is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Not enough is a bad thing, you know. So trying to manage steady growth, uh, and and not take yourself too seriously. I mean, there's a lot of things here that are a difficult balance. You
Seems like I mean, we live. Oh, before I forget,
know. Hmm.
the pickups that you're using.
Yeah.
Tell me about these things because I don't recognize them.
Jerry Sentel in California makes pickups for us, and he came recommended by Elwood Francis, who
Yeah.
does Billy's guitars,
Yeah.
and so we started working with Jerry, and he puts together great pickups for us. Uh, I like the look of his pickups, and I like the sound of them. If we put all kinds of different pickups in our guitars, we put Lawlers in our guitars. We put Bill Harden makes his pickups from scratch up in Hammond, Indiana, and they're called Bronco Busters.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a bunch of guitars we've made that have Bronco Busters in there. They're kind of a higher output.
Okay.
So if you put a higher output pickup in a 5-string open G, you have that real strong mid-range crunch that you're looking for. And if you're playing a 5-string open G guitar made by Newman, you don't want that lower string, the 6th string at all. You're looking for that kind of mid-range brown sugar sound, you know. So
Nice.
yeah.
Uh, there's as opposed to even 10 years ago, there are so many builders out there now. Um, I mean, it's amazing that you found Ted and that you cultivated a relationship with him and you're perpetuating the legacy of this brand because there's something there to build on that people who are starting from scratch don't have. But on the same token, like even though there's such this rich history, there are a lot of people that don't know the name.
Hmm. Oh, totally, totally. We have an age bracket. Like I say, if you were around at that period of time where I grew up, when I got my guitar, it was 1977. So in between 77 and probably 84, 86, you would have had to have been a guitar enthusiast during that period of time to remember Newman enough to carry you all to this day. And I talk to people that remember Newman, and Peter Stroud with Cheryl Crow. Had a conversation about Newman, and he recalls us from the days back in TED, and there's a lot of people that do.
Yeah.
Peter Buck from REM, and these people are still around, and they remember the whimsical nature of Texas Ted, or the Austin shop, or every time they would go through, and they would stop at his shop when they're in Austin, Texas, or something like that. So uh, it still comes around. Lucinda Williams, she's another person who's good to the Ted legacy, and
For sure.
Billy Gibbons and Gilby Clark. You know, these people, come from a Zomidas background a little bit, and have
Right.
followed us into the Danny O'Brien stuff.
It's kind of the American Zomidas. I
Oh,
mean,
totally is.
yeah.
And so, but Tony passed away, and I just think that with Danny being there and having this great ability to do certain things, I was so fortunate that it wasn't necessarily my abilities that got things together. And so Ian is our product manager on our engraved series, and he was basically responsible for consummating that relationship of, hey, I think you two should talk together. And just like in the days of so I'm thankful for Ian for consummating that relationship, just like I did for Jacob Harper and Ted, introducing them to each other so that we can try to pass on something here.
Yeah.
You know, get the right people involved.
Let me ask you this. I mean, in 1978 to even 1988, like in the 80s, there was an explosion of sort of smaller guitar builders, or like you you had your BC Rich, you had your Jackson, your Warmoth was building guitars, Schecter was building those kit guitars. But
Mhm.
how would one, I mean, there was no internet, there was no way to find out about boutique builders, small builders. I mean, would you just have to show up at a guitar show or see a photograph and try and make out the name on a headstock and and then seek that out, or rely on guitar magazines to ask players about the specialty guitars they were playing?
Are you speaking of like in the days when Ted would have started in '78?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I think that what he had to do is the same way you could think about what it was like to buy a vintage guitar back then. Is you'd have to stumble into a guitar store. Luckily, and it happens to be you recognize it by the case behind the cash register, and they haven't put it out yet. And you got lucky. You're the lucky guy. There was no
Got to
credit.
act like you don't know what it is and it's not worth
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll take a look at it. Hold on a second.
Scratched up.
Yeah, we don't have the keys for it, but the thing is that's probably what it was like to try to hustle your wares too. Is Ted had to be at a shop in Austin that got foot traffic,
Right.
um, and he had to support traveling musicians or go on tour himself to make his ends meet. And I don't think Ted ever really made a wealthy living building guitars, but he was legendary for a lot of the things he did, putting EMGs in early guitars and stuff like that. Tom Petty used a Newman that had EMGs in it, and I don't think Tom Petty's famous for using EMGs for anything else. You
Right.
know, you know, and same with Keith and stuff like that. You have him trying to find the next level of what a guitar is supposed to be, and people were liberal enough to let him try different things and hand them to him, and they'd take them out and see what happens. And that kind of R&D is where Ted's history for me and his pioneering really it still sets the curve. That's kind of the funnest part of it. And so working with somebody like Jacob Harper or Robert Mondell or Saul Cole or Bill Harden, uh, I think those people, really make a difference. And so watching what they come up with on Ted's vision is really neat. I'd be lost if I just thought it was myself.
Right. In the spirit of Ted's forward thinking, are there other things that that are not necessarily traditionalist, that are modern or even like futuristic, that you guys are imagining doing with this body shape and neck shape, like with electronics or with any other electronic stuff?
I had worked a little bit with a guy who did a bridge that was catching the vibrations of the wood, and uh, he was calling the guitar and the invention altered states. And that's a really unique vision. And his concept was, if wood has its own voice and its own vibration, then how can we capture that vibration into electronic form and not just necessarily make it metal and magnets?
Right.
And so he has a thing that he's come out with that's a really neat concept. And we've worked together on some of that. And he worked with Ted before, and that's a relationship that I put together. So he's still cultivating that invention, has a patent out for it, and is trying to find. So basically, you could design a guitar that's half swamp ash, half mahogany, and you could dial it. How much mahogany do you want? How much swamp ash do you want? Do you want 70% swamp ash, 30% mahogany? Do you want 70% mahogany?
Have you heard a
That's
working?
really wild, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's fucking blows my mind. Have you heard a working prototype of this in action?
Yeah, yeah. And
And
he can spectrum it and kind of show you the differences of it. And the whole design and the idea that he's got basically is to capture the vibration of the wood. Uh, and I would have to default back to his category of what he's talking about. But
right.
very cool forward invention. I can see things like that.
Wow, that is that is very futuristic.
Yeah. Now it should be you. So I think it's altered states,
Uh-huh.
and
And so
he designed a guitar out there, and he has put it together and is an example of it. He's still out there doing his thing. So
you are you actively trying to figure out how to incorporate this into a model?
at this
Or
point, what he's doing is he's developing his concepts with another builder in California.
got it.
And what they are doing is they're using the Newman guitar design because it's equally balanced. To do this, you can't have the top and bottom be different balance because they have to be the same.
Right.
So
The
they have to be
mass.
like an SG, or it'd have to be something like that. And luckily enough, the Newman is an interesting, unique body design that happens to work for it. And
Huh.
so we've, they kind of said, could we use your body style in corporation with our bridge design? And the answer is, yeah, let's work together. And that was in the very early stages of working with Ted.
Right.
You know,
Uh, that is that's crazy. I can't wait to look that up.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, I mean, I always think that I'm going to come up with some sort of really brilliant idea, but I don't know. I don't know what kind of mind you have to have, or what sort of like letting go of all the things that interrupt our daily thoughts, right? All the distractions. I don't know what it is that you have to shed all that stuff in order to come up with something completely original and innovative, like this guy has, or like Ted did even.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's you get inspired by the things going on around you, and pretty soon you just wake up in the middle of the night and you got this crazy idea, and that's kind of how songs are written. That's how great ideas for a lot of what drives our innovations come to. You know, throw yourself out of the shower to write something down. Let's hope we have those moments of you know, epiphany where we got to jot down how prolific that moment was.
Right.
It doesn't always happen that way, but what can happen is when you look at a pile of wood and you kind of say, man, that would sure look great with that. Or you go through pictures and you see a type of binding And you're thinking, because I'm doing that right now, of course, I'm looking at binding selections and wood tops and thinking, oh, that's so great. Look at that. You know,
Right.
I saw a Fender custom shop that had perloid binding around the whole thing, around the whole neck and the headstock, and everything is just thick perloid binding. So I had to do that eventually. You
Yeah,
just have
that's
to do it.
pretty sharp.
And then it may be a year before you pull it off, but you just hold it back there and eventually you make a run for it.
Right. If someone wants to buy a Newman guitar, do they start by looking at the website and reach out to you guys, or is there a network of dealers outside of the platinum shop, the platinum rooms, or are you guys dealing with a lot of custom builds? And like, how does one get the ball rolling?
You go to the internet and we're on the Guitar Center and the Musician's Friend site. They have some that are also listed in the Platinum Room.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably 5 selections of different models there. And then Rumble Seat Music does a lot of our one-off, and they're vintage best guitar store in the United States, and they do our one-offs and stuff like that. We also work with South Shore Guitar Boutique.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then BCR Music with Greg Platzer.
Is South Shore they're on Long Island, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, I
So.
got to get over there. They gotta have that. They have a lot of great stuff. It
I think it's Mike Tremonti.
does not surprise me that they have your guitars in there. That's
Yeah,
great.
they got one. They got the one that I was just talking about that has the wide perloid binding around the whole thing. So,
Is that right?
yeah, they got one I'm fond of.
Come here, Rose. Come on. No? Okay, fine. She's fickle.
Yeah.
So you would recommend, if someone wants to seek out your guitars and eventually buy one, go to the internet. Don't get in touch with you guys. Aren't doing direct stuff.
No, I'm not saying that. I would say get in touch with us, and it's sales@newmanguitars.net.
Got it.
And you can go to our Facebook site and hit us up through a message on that. You can go through the Instagram also, which is Newman Guitars, and hit us up on a message through that. A lot of people see guitars that they like and make comment on that and how much would they cost and stuff like that. So what the guitar stores that we're doing, the independent guitar stores out there are getting our special builds. If I don't have an order for something and I have a vision for it, I'll build it and we'll look at it. And if we decide to release it, we will. And I think we come out with the best guitars that way, as we're building things because we want to and looking at them. And not every guitar has a customer. I'm the customer.
Yeah.
And I'm buying.
You're the tastemaker.
Yeah. So, but it
seems to be. Well, I'll say this: it seems to be working just fine right now. So
yeah.
Don't break it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun still. So it's sales@newmanguitars.net, and you could reach out to us. We also have a phone number too, and that is 317 486 9648.
Cool. I'll make sure that I put a link up in the description of the podcast, and I'll shout out the website at the top as well, and a couple of the dealers.
Good. Thank you very much.
I really have enjoyed talking with you this evening. I appreciate you taking some time. I'm sorry if there was some technical stuff at the top.
Yeah, no problem.
I love the look of the guitars. I look forward to putting my hands on one. I'm hit the Platinum Room up or get over there to South Shore.
Yeah.
And there's a day for everything.
Oh yeah. So I appreciate the opportunity as well. It's a good experience for us to get out there and do a podcast like this. So I appreciate that.
I make a couple of promotional posts
Mhm.
uh I don't know if you've seen them or not, but I'll remove the background and have a vibe that I sort of
Mhm.
conjure. uh
Sure.
do you have any decent photos of you and Ted with one of the guitars? Is that something that exists that I could use to and manipulate to make a post?
I don't think that there is. I have two pictures of Ted and I together,
Yeah,
and that was it. And they're both just like holding it out there, and
right.
that's only because he made me do that. You know,
do
I
you
never
have any
necessarily
do
do
you
it.
have any high res photos of you with a guitar?
Oh, of course, yeah, yeah, sure. I've got stuff like that.
Great. Okay. Awesome.
Or
I'd l-
Jacob, I got some with Jacob too, and Jacob's, he looks great behind the guitar. So,
well, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of those with me,
okay, we'll do.
that'd be great. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'll do that.
Man, thank you so much. I wish
All right,
you
Mike.
the best of luck.
Thank you.
I think you're doing a good thing with a very cool guitar, and you're keeping it alive in a beautiful way.
Yeah, all right. I appreciate that support very much.
All right, man. Well, listen, happy new year
You too.
and take care.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.